You are listening to the Ready PDM Network.
This episode is brought to you by Under 10 Consulting. For many organizations, it seems products get released by individual heroics. Yet most organizations need a small number of living documents, fewer than 10, to manage their products and services. Contact Under 10 for a product playbook designed specifically for your organization.
Are you ready?
And the companies forget what it means to make great products. Sort of the product sensibility and the product genius that brought them to that monopolistic position gets rotted out by people running these companies who have no conception of a good product versus a bad product. They have no conception of the craftsmanship that's required to take a good idea and turn it into a good product. And they really have no feeling in their hearts, usually, about wanting to really help the customers.
Like everyone else, there were times when I just myopically got stuck in what I was doing that one day and missed the broader context.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
I tried everything, even WhatsApp.
Did you try BBM?
No, what's that?
BlackBerry Messenger. But it's not only for BlackBerry anymore. It just came out for iPhone and Android, and it's free to download.
This has been, hands down, the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my entire life.
EventMobi is an amazing company with one simple focus. We help event planners make engaging apps for their events with ease.
For the first time ever, product managers are heroes, right? Why is that?
Industry and scholarship and the arts needs question askers.
And people come out of the class and they're able to talk like product managers.
Yeah. Why ask questions? Well, sometimes being able to ask a good question is more important than finding a good answer.
Are you ready?
Hello, Ready Product Radio heads, and welcome to another exciting episode of Ready Product Radio. This week, we talked to veteran product professional Balaji Gopalan about the great things he is doing at BrainStation in Toronto, about the integration of product management and agile, and about the importance of treating product management as more than just a title or a department, but a core part of your organization's DNA. Ready Product Principle number 12 is, product manager is a title. Product management can be a department. But for maximum impact, make product management a core component of your cultural DNA. Enjoy the show. Balaji Gopalan, welcome to Ready Product Radio, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me. You
and I have known each other for quite a while now, but for the purposes of our audience and our listeners, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Alan. Thanks very much. So my name is Balaji. I've been a career product manager in tech since 2004, but you could argue, if you think about the discipline of product management, I've actually kind of been doing it since about the late 90s. I started in a very different industry. I was in aviation and didn't have the title of product manager, but I was kind of doing product management work. Scope, schedule, resources, all the same types of questions. And then I moved into software in the early 2000s. BlackBerry in the early days of the smartphone industry, and basically grew my role there, led the product management team for the consumer services group, left there 2012 and dove into the startup space as a platform-oriented product lead. So I have this specific passion for how companies get together and build something greater than the sum of its parts. I think it's the most fun part about product management. Did that at Desire to Learn. Did that at a wearable tech company called Nimi. And most recently, I've been doing some consulting and advising and teaching work, which I know we're going to talk about tonight, in the space of product strategy, product management culture, and processes.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Paul. As I think you know, the Ready Product Radio podcast is about helping product people of all disciplines be ready for the many challenges that they will face on their product journeys. So with that in mind, there was 3 topics I was hoping we could cover. One is we're here at BrainStation, and I know you've been doing some great product work here. So hoping we can talk about that and what your goals are with that. And then second, you and I are both kind of old timers in the discipline. So I thought it would be good for us to talk about what you think are the top 3 things that are different now. Yeah. Because you're mentioning working with startups than perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, I thought another good topic would be agile, and specifically, have we got to a point now where product management knows how to coexist and how to work with with agile, or do we still have some work to go there? Does that sound like a good set of topics for you?
Sounds like an excellent set of topics. All very important things to talk about.
Awesome. So as I said, we're sitting here on the third floor at the BrainStation offices in Toronto. So why don't we start with your work at BrainStation? Why don't we start, for those who aren't familiar with what BrainStation is? Maybe you can explain for us generally what BrainStation is, and then talk more specifically about the product curriculum that you're driving here and what your goals are for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So BrainStation is an education institute focused on technologies, processes, business practices that help primarily small stage technology companies succeed. And so, I mean, the closest vernacular, you could think of it as a coding boot camp. We have a number of really excellent ones here in the city, including BrainStation. But what I think is really unique about what the folks here do is they look at all the aspects of the business. So we have courses in web design, web development, and iOS development, but as well, digital design, digital marketing, and product management. And, you know, when I spoke to the BrainStation folks when they were first getting started a couple of years ago, and they told me that they had this vision of including product management in their set of courses that they were going to be launching, I thought that was really interesting because you don't hear about this. Those of us that do this work, you know, we kind of live it and breathe it day in, day out. But how do people get into a job like this? And I thought that was a really interesting idea, especially because I think we're seeing a bit of a renaissance, a product management renaissance. There's never been a better time to be a product manager than right now. And I can say that, as you said, Alan, I've been doing this for a long time. And this is the best time to do it. And so we put our heads together and we said, okay, well, how would we build something like this? Interestingly enough, when I spoke to them, it seemed like they themselves, like so many other people we know, knew about product management, but even they weren't really sure what it was. And so I said, okay, well, I have this wonderful opportunity to be really arrogant and define it for myself and pretend like I have the answer. And so we built this curriculum. It's a 12-week course over 36 hours, so 3 hours a week. And my approach to this was very much reflective on my view of product management. So I am a whole product manager. Right. To me, as a product manager, what I think about is how do we make the company successful with the thing that we're building? And product management is a service function in my view of it. And I'm very diligent and emphatic about this when I talk about it in the course. Companies hire very smart, talented people who work very hard. And I say this because I've had this experience, be it at Bombardier or BlackBerry or Desire to Learn or NAMI. I've always worked with people who worked really hard and cared about what they did. They don't phone it in when they get to work. And those could be developers, they could be designers, they could be marketers, they could be financiers, they could be human resources people, they could be salespeople, they could be support people. And our job as product managers is to ensure that they're not wasting their time, that they're applying their talents to producing something they can be proud of, as reflected in the company being successful, that then turns in accolades for their careers as well as, you know, the salary that they take home every day. And so, you know, when I think about product management, I think about all the things that are required to make that happen. And sort of stereotypical marketing vernacular, I guess that's the 4 Ps, but it's more than that. And so when I thought about what I wanted to teach, I said, well, I'd like to take a product manager through the entire journey. This is not just, hey, build this and go sit with engineering and make it happen, although that's a very, very important part of what we do. But it's also, how do you determine what to do? How do you determine whether you're going to be successful? How do you measure that success? And how do you empower the organization to deal with changes that happen along the way? So we built this course that goes from the very beginning to the very end of the product lifecycle, and we do it in a simulation. So, you know, the people that come into the course typically have heard about what product management is, but they really don't have a sense of what it is. And we kind of throw them into the fire. one of the things that BrainStation prides itself on is being very different than the way that education is typically delivered. We take concepts like flipped classroom and concepts like group work and group discussion, and put that at the center of our education approach. So the students come in, and by the second class, they have to pick a project, which is really frightening because they have no idea how to build a product yet. And I usually get this feedback, well, Bal, we're not ready yet. We got to learn stuff. I'm like, no, you don't. What problem do you want to solve? And the reason I do it so early is because I want them to follow the only door that they possibly have open to them, which is something they care about. Right? So that typically rolls into maybe something they're doing at work where they sort of say, well, what if I was in charge of this? What would I do and how would I do it differently? It's interesting. I've actually seen some students take a product that's almost completely built and pretend like they're building it from the beginning. And so they can question some of the decisions that were made. And I've done this kind of thing in my career too, so I appreciate the value of that. In other cases, it's the polar opposite, where they say, I love my job, I work hard, but I want to do something really different in this class. And because our class is after hours during the week, they come in with a very much I've worked a long day and now I'm in the product management class and I'm going to think differently here. And then in other cases, we actually have entrepreneurs who are in the process of or dreaming of creating a startup. And one thing I've really come to appreciate in this course is the grand parallels that exist between product entrepreneurs and product managers, with the exception of things like, corporate policy. There's a lot of parallels and stuff that you have to think about. And so, they have to come up with a topic by the second class, and then we go through things like, what is the role of product management? Why is it important? What do other functions think about it? What are some of the political dirty laundry that we have to understand to do this job properly that we should talk about and figure out a way to make work better? Right through to how do you define a customer? What is a vision statement? What is the product canvas? So I am not afraid of prompting and leveraging frameworks that those of us that are in the product management discipline for some time use, including the canvas. And then I talk about, and it's funny because people at this point sort of go, I think the product's going to look like this. And of course, the question I ask is, how do you know that? Well, you haven't talked to a customer yet. So let's go and do some research. So we talk about market research tools. And I'm very open about the fact that product management is stealing these disciplines from other functions in the company, be it marketing or sales or engineering or finance. And that's exactly representative of what the job is. We're a little bit of everything. And we provide information to those functions to do their job better. So we go through market research, then we define our MVP, and then we build our product proposition, and then I get into agile software development, which I know we'll talk about today. Why do I pick that? Well, because many people who come to the class are looking to join tech startups, and tech startups typically run on agile. And it's interesting because, of course, they don't have engineers, they don't have marketers, so we're doing it all in a simulation, but they come away with the vernacular. And that is extremely empowering to people who might otherwise find it intimidating. So they understand what a user story is and a job story is and a product backlog and an MVP and what is net promoter score and what is customer lifetime value and what is net present value and all of these other things. Once the product is quote unquote built, then we build a story around it. So how do you take it into the market? How do you test it? How would you do a competitive analysis of what you built versus what's happening externally? Now, what metrics do you want to build? So we talk about things like lifetime value and customer acquisition cost and forecasting. And how do you, we touch a little bit on things like digital advertising and how you monetize the dynamics of running a product on an app store. And then we introduce the concept of product marketing. And so what is the relationship between product management and marketing from the perspective of messaging and positioning and programs, and lean pricing. So of course, given that I'm very much targeting the startup ecosystem, I lean very, very heavily on lean startup and the concepts therein. This has been hands down the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my entire life for a few reasons. It was very challenging. I tend to sound smarter than I am. I've come to realize that about myself. So I had to go and relearn a lot of stuff that I didn't know. For example, I'm not an expert in design, but I think most modern product managers need to understand it. So we do a class in design and in wireframing, and I had to go learn all that myself. I leveraged my network of product managers, including yourself, to amass information of what I want to teach. And I learned from my students. So I've now done this twice. I'm pleased to say that I'll be teaching the third or the fourth cohort in January of 2016. And I've learned from all of my students in terms of what resonates, what doesn't resonate, what order the content should be delivered in, and how they can get the most out of it. But I've come to think a lot about the discipline of product management and how we make it effective just by listening to myself talk about it. And that's helped me in everything that I do.
Yeah, well, they do say the best way to learn something is to teach it,
Absolutely.
right? So that's great. And I know I had our privilege to sit in on a couple of your final classes, and the thing that struck me was just how much you jam pack into that 36 hours. Like, I was thinking back, and I think I had to get like 10 years into my career before I had that in-depth appreciation. So let's unpack this a little bit more then. So like BrainStation isn't a university. So are these certificate courses, or can you bundle a bunch of them together to get some kind of designation?
Yeah. I mean, we're growing and exploring. One thing about BrainStation that's pretty unique is, compared to their competitors, is they have a close partnership by way of the fact that they're owned by an enterprise services organization called Conrad Group that's been doing this kind of work for a while, and acquired BrainStation because they felt that education was a key part of helping enterprises be successful. So they offer, everything from organizational to product consulting, but then they also bring in the education piece, which we're starting with focusing on a consumer model of people sign up for courses and take them, but they will also be expanding into enterprise training as well, including product management, which is going to be very interesting. To kind of come in and take product managers in an organization and put them through this end-to-end view, whereas I think we both know that a lot of product managers, especially in larger companies, might have a kind of a narrow view of what product management is. The other thing about BrainStation that I would like to mention is we're headquartered here in Toronto, but we're not just based here. So BrainStation has now expanded to Ottawa, Waterloo, Vancouver, New York, and we have an eye towards going across the ocean to London. And the product management course that we've created is going to be introduced in Vancouver in January simultaneously.
Nice.
So I'm extremely proud of what we've done, and hopefully we're going to build this community, this international community of very, very broad thinking, humble but confident product managers. The school also provides the tools for them to stay in contact. So we're trying to build a very strong alumni network. I'm in touch with all the students that I've taught so far, and they're in touch with each other. So the focus here is not on paper. We're certainly hoping that if you put on your resume that you took product management at BrainStation, that's recognized and worth something as you go and expand your existing career or perhaps source a new one. But more importantly, and this is what excites me, it's really all around what you can do. And people come out of the class and they're able to talk like product managers. They're able to evaluate what's happening around them. And so we don't put an emphasis on things like grades or certificates. It's really, you get out of it what you put into it. And I really like that model. Obviously, it's not free, although we have a portfolio of services that we will be offering, especially now that we're in our new location. Ranging from free workshops, I run a free workshop every month, to one-day bootcamp courses, and product manager, you can envision things would be like, the canvas or job stories or a persona or managing a product backlog, things like that, to this full-fledged courses. And we might even be exploring things like full-time courses, which would go much deeper on some of these these subjects.
So are you comfortable sharing an idea, giving the audience an idea what the cost is for for this 36 hours, or would you rather just have them look that up on the website and get in touch with the organization?
Yeah, I mean, things are expanding very, very quickly with BrainStation. So, I mean, if you go to brainstation.io, you can see the course outline. What I will say is there are incentive programs. So we have early bird specials for people who want to sign up. We've also done partnerships with some organizations to help move forward the very worthwhile and an important initiative of getting more women into tech. And I'm really pleased to say that I've had some very strong people of multiple backgrounds, different kinds of backgrounds in my class, including some girls who were new to tech. Came and took the course, and they have categorically told me, "Bal, this is what I want to do. I want to build something." In fact, I met with one earlier today, so I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah, and I know the passion myself, having helped lead the Toronto Product Management Association for about a dozen years. I know what you mean when you say how rewarding that is, seeing people grow and whatnot. So. You wouldn't really compare this, just to give our listeners some context. This is quite different than a Pragmatic. This is quite different than a 280 group, quite different than some of the other offerings out there. And I know it's one of the questions that I get a lot when I go to the associations and the product camps. Should I get a certification? All I can say, as I said to you before, is I'm just amazed by how much you've jammed in.
Thank you.
To that 36 hours, and I know if that was me going through that course, I'd be thinking, okay, this is great. How do I get more? How do I keep going? So, is that part of what you're thinking about doing next? Is maybe having drill downs on some of the core
absolutely,
topics?
Yeah. I mean,
because that's a lot to cover in 36 hours.
It really is.
Your head could be spinning.
Admittedly, we built the course is called Intro to Product Management very deliberately. Like you said, Alan, to get to some level of expertise took you and took me 10 years, right? And we're definitely not going to do that in 36 hours. And I think that would apply to many of the courses that BrainStation teaches. But what we're out to do is to get more people interested, to build great companies, to build products that solve some of the world's biggest problems, and technology will almost always be the answer to things like that. Although product management thinking doesn't just apply to tech, it can apply to everything.
Exactly.
And so what I'm hoping happens when people take my course is they see all the possible disciplines of product management, everything from strategy, competitive analysis, ideation, customer development, through to product development, feature prioritization, agility, I guess, managing the day-to-day decisions that happen when you're building individual stories, right through to positioning, messaging, go-to-market, metrics, financial analysis, and to sort of decide what resonates with them.
Right.
Because the most important thing that product manager can bring to the table is passion. And this is what bothers me a little bit about the way that education and product management happened until now is it's very university-like. So, sit down and here are some frameworks and here are some stories and here are some...
Lecture style.
Yeah. And the fact that you were there listening seems to be enough, but that doesn't mean that you're interested. So what I want to ask people is, be honest, what are you interested in? Yep. And we're going to build out some deep dive courses on things like that. And maybe they'll decide, what? I now understand what a product manager does, and it's not what I want to do. That's great, because chances are if you're working in a product company, you will work with a product manager, and now you know how to think. But if you now understand how to be a designer, a developer, a marketer, a salesperson, a support person, working with your product manager better, then I got to say I've done my job. So that's kind of what we're thinking and how we're hoping we can contrast to things like 280 and Pragmatic, which have their place and are very important. And in fact, I refer to them several times, but what we're doing is different.
Yeah, and the other thing I liked about what you said there too, Bo, was the idea or the focus on the whole product manager, because I've certainly seen that in Toronto. The startup community is very vibrant right now. That's what you're connecting with.
Yeah.
But a lot of people working in a product management career in the Toronto area will also work for large corporations,
Absolutely.
the Bells, the Teluses, the banks, etc., which might have a much narrower view of the product. But you're never in any danger, even if you're in a narrower role, of having a broader perspective, because it allows you to connect, as you say, with those other functions. So Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem even if somebody did want to go and get a certification from another group of recommending this course, because it just covers such a broad area of the topic. So let's leave it there. Thank you for that. So before we leave it, so BrainStation.io is the one place that they can go to get more information.
Right. Yeah, and BrainStation.io, there's a section in there called events. If you're curious about the course, I do a free workshop once a month, talking about, and we try to make it a little bit fun. I won't give anything away, but we talk about what is a product manager and just sort of whet your appetite and why you might want to explore this as a career or expand upon it. The first one, I think, will be the second week of January next year. So I look forward to seeing some of our listeners there.
Awesome. Good. So thanks for talking about that. So let's change gears a little bit here. So as I was saying at the beginning, you and I are both sitting here. It's a podcast, so people don't have the luxury of seeing our gray hair. But you have more hair than I do.
The hair that we do have.
You have more hair than I do, but both of ours are a little gray. Let's talk a little bit. I'd like to get your perspective, because I'm really excited to see somebody who's been in the game as long as you have be really excited about the startup community, because there is a vibrant startup community. So talk to me about what you've seen over the past 10, 15 years, and what would, like, pick the top 3 or 5, whatever you want. What have been the fundamental changes, like, for product managers today that make it different from, let's say, if you went to a pragmatic training 15 years ago? Like, what are some of the key differences today, do you think?
Well, I mean, I hate to sort of hang my hat on something that seems like an easy answer, but I think the lean revolution has been really interesting. I did do the monolithic 60-page marketing requirements document.
MRD.
The MRD, the one that I recall, and I worked on it with some friends. So if they're listening, I'm sure they're cringing too. I wrote the marketing requirements document for what would eventually become BlackBerry Messenger 5.0.
BBM.
At BlackBerry, and It was this just enormous thing that was based on me evaluating all these other messenger clients out there and taking in some feedback and walking through features, and it was exactly like we all know it was, which is that engineering took it and said, okay, we'll see you in a little while. And they kind of came back with something that sort of looked like we had in the MRD, but of course the market had evolved by the time we launched it, and there were challenges in that product. It's interesting now to look at the way that companies build things. I do want to just highlight one thing that, in reference to what you said with respect to large companies versus startups, and I think it's really important. I am one of these people who fundamentally believes that innovation and entrepreneurship can happen everywhere. I have, without naming names, I have worked for large companies which at times were incredibly innovative, creative, brave, broke down walls. Maybe they weren't lean and agile from a process perspective the way we think of it today, but this is also a while back. And I've also worked for what you would expect in a larger company, which is things get lost and mired in process, which is used as a way of absolving people the responsibility to think about the customer and make decisions. And that's what frustrates people about stereotypically large companies. Conversely, I've worked at some very, very innovative small companies where we rolled up our sleeves. We were just completely embedded in what we were doing in terms of the value of the product we were building and the potential for how it could change the world. I would basically say NIMI was a great example of that and continues to be so. And I actually worked for a startup that was, just to illustrate it, I think it was 5 people, and it was one of the most bureaucratic places I'd ever been in my entire life. And so, I think that reflects as well in the way that the product management process is rolled out. And it's funny that I use that words because product managers have one loyalty, which is to the company's success. They are not loyal to a process. In fact, good product managers break process all the time. They're just very transparent about doing it, right? And so I think if you're willing to play that role, no matter where you are, and do whatever it takes to sort of say, look, information has changed. We have to put our preconceived notions and sunk costs aside and relook at what we're doing, make sure we're doing the right thing. The merging of our unique abilities and what's happening in the market, then we have a better chance of being successful. So that thinking, I think, is what's really changed. Whether we can credit all to Eric Ries or not, I don't know. But it's interesting to see how that's synergized against a bunch of other things that are happening. For the first time ever, product managers are heroes, right? Why is that? Well, because the people that have created the products that define our world today, be it, Facebook or Apple or Slack or, Google Docs, and trying to think of both consumer and enterprise things, that define how we do things. When they talk about product management stuff.
Exactly.
Right? They talk about, hey, here's the vision. Hey, here's what we're doing for customers. Hey, here's why we're different. Here's why we're going to make money. And it's kind of like the secret thing. And I apologize if I'm giving away a spoiler to the rest of the world, but we all know they're product managers. All these people that we admire are product managers. And so now everybody's starting to realize the importance of this role and how it guides an entire company. But in the stories they tell, they talk about being very I don't want to say reactive because that's the wrong connotation, but being very, very sprightly and being able to
sense and respond type of thing.
Push large changes when things change in the market. And that's, again, reflective of this new way of thinking. So I think two things have happened. Product management has moved from a function, which is what it was 10 years ago, to a philosophy, which is what it is now. Everybody at effective companies should be a product manager, whether you have the title or not. And the other thing is, because they've amassed all this attention, there's all these checks and balances to ensure that success and failure are determined very quickly. So I think that's the other thing that's reflected in the way that startups operate and the way that at least big companies want to operate, including banks, education, government, energy, like things that you just never thought could be agile. I hear that talk from them. Are they able to do it successfully across the company? No, there's still a lot of challenges there, but at least they want to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's good stuff. And I know you've, do you know Luke Homan? You've probably heard of him, the Innovation Games. Yeah. So I was intrigued because he, after having quite some success with Innovation Games in the technology space, I've heard, indirectly through some people who know him, that he's gotten into that kind of government space and whatnot. Because their organizations are looking, like you're saying, to try to get some of those same benefits. So that's interesting. Yeah. So I guess a recommendation from you then would be read about Lean, read about the Lean startup approach. I know I've heard previous guests talk about guys like Steve Blank and people like that. So it sounds like you're kind of
I'm definitely in the same group. Just the one thing I want to say is it's not just reading these things, but how you read them that matters, right? So what people look for is a prescriptive process, but there is no such thing.
Let me read it over the weekend, and I'll come in on Monday and
I'll just
be a new person.
It's this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, and then if I just do that every time, everything will be great. But that's not true. There's factors that affect what success looks like that Eric Ries and Steve Blank couldn't possibly know because they don't know your company. So, what is the unique aspects of your business? What is the culture in your organization? What are the talents of the people? What's happening with your competitors? Where are your customers in the customer development life cycle? All that stuff, will change what you do. And so what I'd ask the listeners to think about when they look at these things, these sort of new modern approaches to product, is not what process you should follow, but what questions you should be asking every single time. And the more courage with which you can ask those questions, even if you don't know the answer, you're pushing product thinking into the rest of your company, the more successful you're going to be, and that matters more than anything else.
That's a good. I think that's a good place to end that topic there. Asking good questions, and that connects to your point that product management is an approach. It's a philosophy.
Yeah.
It's not a department or a function. Okay, good. So listen, I want to respect your time, Bal. So let's go into our third topic there. So I recently gave a talk in Product Camp in Ottawa. It was entitled, "Is Agile Killing the Product Manager?" Obviously, it was a bit of link bait, type of thing, or vote bait, I guess it would be, right? Because you've got the stickers to vote with.
That's right.
But I was genuinely interested in the topic, and I want to hear your perspective on this, because I know, without getting into too much details, that the environment I work in right now, our development team is quote unquote agile.
Yes.
But there's a whole number of other functions within our organization. It's a large international organization that it would be a real stretch to call agile, if not to be an outright falsehood. So I want to get your perspective, again, somebody that's been in the product management game for years, but living with these startup type of mentality. Where do you think we are with product management and agile coexisting? Is there still work to be done there, or have we drawn the lines and we know how to work together now, or are we still don't know how to play nice, so to speak?
It's our favorite topic, isn't it? It's kind of funny when agile first started to become popular. The amount of material that was published almost as like therapy and support groups for product managers was hilarious, right?
It's crazy, yeah.
And we almost lost the forest for the trees in that whole thing. So what equilibrium, if any, have we reached at this point? I am a big proponent of Agile because I think the reason it was created was very obvious. And again, it's all organizational dynamics.
Yep.
The engineers hated being blamed for building the wrong thing. That's basically what it was, right? Stop blaming us. We just did what the product manager said. But when the CEO is looking across their organization, they just go, well, look, we built the wrong thing. So who built it? Well, it's engineering. Oh, they must have done the wrong thing. And so, those poor men and women who work so hard needed to find a way out. And that's basically where Agile came from. It was this ultimate compromise between needing to be given instruction, but also being willing to not commit too much because the instructions might be wrong.
Right.
The weakness in that is that was really fixing engineering's problem, but what about the rest of the company? And there have been lots of ways to try and address this. I think my response to this is very much in line with what I just said, which is, again, don't congratulate yourself as a product manager making the agile process work for its own sake. Ask yourself why it's being done. Are we being more responsive to the customer? Are we ensuring there's less waste? If we've created this discipline and this cadence in agile with engineering, how do you, as a product manager, take advantage of that and sort of say, you know what, the sprint has been defined, 2 weeks they know what they're going to go build. Okay, now I have this amazing opportunity to go figure out what we need to do next. I don't even have to be completely right, right? Agile is the software development instantiation of the lean startup methodology. So what is the experiment I'm going to run? And I can do this because the engineering team already knows what they need to do for the next 2 weeks. And how do I figure this stuff out? We have to address the low-level operational issue that always comes up, which is you're not a product manager, you're a product owner. Your job is to sit here with me and be at the stand-up every single day. I lived that not as a product manager. I lived it as a manager of product managers, where the project manager, or I guess the term would be they were the scrum master, came to see me and complained about one of my employees saying, where the hell is, let's call him Jack. If he's listening, his name isn't Jack, but if he's listening, he'll know who he is. Where the hell is Jack? We had a stand-up and he wasn't there. And I was like, well, Jack is at a trade show talking to customers. That's not what product managers should be doing. They should be here at the engineering team. And he was dead serious. Well, again, we have the world's most fulfilling and the most thankless job in the world. suck it up, right? What do I mean by that? Let's fix the issue. Where do you need to be to create value in the company? Don't be there just because the process says you have to be there. But damn well be there if the engineering team isn't able to proceed without you. And if you have to be in two places at once, here's the other job that's never in a job description for product managers. Turn the company into product managers. Talk to your salespeople. Give them a list of questions that they should be asking when they're in front of the customer at the trade show when you're not. Or conversely, here are the things, Mr. or Miss Scrum Master, that we need to be thinking about. I'd like you to represent me in the next stand-up and ask these things. It's a bit taboo, but again, we're not here to defend process. We're here to defend efficiency, we're here to defend customer focus, and we're here to defend company metrics. So, make it work. And I apologize if that sounds like a cop-out answer.
No.
But that's exactly what has to happen. So I think we've had some soak time with Agile, and now product managers are starting to understand how to make it work, how to deal with the fact that while engineering might happily be Agile and saying, I don't know what we're building, I just know when we're going to be building it, that's not acceptable for a marketing organization that has to plan their budget a year in advance. So why not look at things like release defining features and sort of say, you know what, I'm giving you X amount to play with, engineering team, which I'm not going to commit to, but I need these 5 things and I need them on this date because that's when the trade show is happening, or that's when our competitor is launching, or that's the seasonality of our market. Be brave. Don't let people tell you that you're a cog in a wheel of a process when you're really more of somebody who measures the outputs of the process. That being said, accountability versus responsibility. So catch your flies with honey, not with vinegar. Prove to people why focusing on company metrics will make their jobs that much better and easier to do.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. So let's just summarize or try to recap some of it. So what I hear you saying is Agile is like any process. Don't concretize it and follow it just for the sake of process. Look to the broader context. What are the goals of the process? And a lot of what I heard you saying there as well is understand the context. So if the context right now is for the life cycle of your product that you got to spend a week with your engineering team, do that. If the context is no, sales is really lost, they need some guidance, then you have to be there. And the other thing I heard you say, which I think has been a theme throughout our entire talk here, is the easiest way to succeed as a product manager is to make the rest of your company product managers.
You got it.
To spread that spread that philosophy. That way you don't have to be everywhere. And if you are wherever you are, you're training people how to be like you, so that you can be somewhere else. Is that a fair?
You got it exactly.
Okay, good. That's a fair summary. Okay, cool. All right. Well, listen, I want to respect your time, so let's leave that one there, Bal. So I always wrap up with one question, and I spin it depending on the age and the experience level of the person I'm talking to. So, since you and I are about 20 years in on this, I'll ask the question this way. If you could go back 15 or 20 years and talk to your younger self, the young Bal just looking out, maybe coming out of university, looking at options and whatnot, what business advice would you give to yourself and why?
That's a great question. I mean, it always looks so much easier from here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I have the benefit of experience, which means some successes and a whole whack of failures. And one should caution oneself in saying, "I wish I didn't fail," because that's what we learned.
Right.
But I think the one thing that I wish I did more of when I was younger, as a product manager at the beginning of my career, was to build a story in my head for what the borders and edges of the business were. And how do I explain the business in one sentence and then test everything against that? Like everyone else, there were times when I just myopically got stuck in what I was doing that one day and missed the broader context, which doesn't just mean sort of market analysis, but the broader organizational context or philosophical context or cost context. That happened to me a few times, and now I realize how I would think about those things differently now versus then. So I think about the kind of mentorship that I offer new product managers and people wanting to go in the role, and my students in questioning, well, what do you think this really means? And if we do this, how do we know we're going to be successful? Or what do you think the implications of that are? I would love to be able to mentor myself that way, my younger self, and some of the product decisions that I made accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Interesting answer. Good. So before we wrap up, is there any contact information you're comfortable sharing if people listening to this want to ask you a question or just learn more about you or get in touch with you? Anything you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter at Balaji Gopalan, BALAJIGOPALAN 73. And for those of you who are on the network, 10,000 Coffees, I am a mentor on 10,000 Coffees. You can find me that way as well.
That's great. Yeah, I've got to look up 10,000 Coffees. It's very interesting. So Balaji Gopalan, thank you on behalf of Ready Product Radio and our listeners for taking the time to speak with us. It's been very interesting. And perhaps, maybe in another year or so, we can come back and do this again and kind of see where your journey is here with BrainStation.
I'd love to.
See how it's evolved.
Thanks so much, Alan.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.
Today's podcast was brought to you by Under 10 Consulting. Get your product teams up to speed quickly with the latest methods and a proven process tailored to your organization. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ready Product Radio, part of the Ready PDM network. This is when most podcasters ask you to leave a review on iTunes if you like the show. My only request is if you found the show entertaining, inspiring, or informative, please share it with a colleague or friend who may feel the same way. Also, note that the views expressed in this episode do not necessarily reflect my views or the views of the Ready PDM network. If you want yourself or your product to be ready, then keep your eyes on your markets, your ears to your customers, your mind on their experiences, both good and bad, and finally keep your hearts in your products. Until next time, thank you for listening. You can contact us on Twitter at Ready Product Radio. That's RDYPRODUCTRADIO. And on the web at www.readyproductradio.com.
Gee, Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.